right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. Child time travelers, as well as the idea of cloning technology, and is it being used right now? Without further ado, let's get to it. My little chat with Mary Rodwell.
There's a few things that are interesting about this young lad. He's now 9, but let me tell you some of the things that I'm getting from parents with their children and their awareness that continually blows my mind, if you like. But let me just read a few things that I picked out from this 5-year. He's 9 now, but he started to have conscious contact when he was 6. He kept saying, he was talking about how he gets scared sometimes because when they pick him up, he can't move, and they surround the bed and take him out and come out of a portal with they have their zetas, the black eyes and grey skin, and they put him to sleep and take him. He says they're part of a science team, he said, and they've told him that he's special. They've shown him many things on a screen: dinosaur times, future times. He spoke in depth about God, something his mother said she's never mentioned, and said the older, bigger aliens told him God is not what most people think. They showed him this vortex-type black hole that isn't a black hole, and it's a violet light that creates. The aliens, he said, don't even know who created it or when. He went on to say that he goes up. He said, this is about him going out of body. He said he had a scary experience once. They tried to move him from his body, and his head started to feel funny, and it vibrated, and his soul went up through his head, and said he could go anywhere in the universe, all over the universe. And he went into detail about this. Now, this is the interesting bit, and I've got several that have said now that they're time travelers. He said he's a time traveler from the future. His real form is not the body he inhabits now. He is genderless in that form. Again, the mother said, never mentioned anything of those terms. He says his alien form is really us from the future. They are us, we are them. And that was when he was 7. He went on to describe he had no nails and 4 fingers. He said he's visited once a week, and there are other children like him where he's taken on board craft. He gets an education with these aliens. He calls them the taller beings, and explained that they've got an IQ of over 400. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else. Shown the past, history, and future. He says that the other children he's with sometimes he doesn't know in everyday life. So they're just some of those that I thought were interesting, because I've had others now say they've come from the future.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So what that again is saying, this time traveling thing that we call time travel, which of course whistleblowers in the secret space program talk about, that they can go back into the past and into the future. These are coming in completely oblivious to the secret space program.
They know nothing about it.
No, nothing, and this child knows nothing about the secret space program. But he's describing.
Yeah. This is why I say, sorry, Mary, to cut you off, that the children really are the corroborators of all of the other research that all of us have done, when they can come in and be so specific about these experiences, going into the deep underground bases or being abducted, to, these elaborate equations or, within the quantum spectrum, to, gosh, many of the other sort of unbelievable things that so-called whistleblowers have talked about. These kids have no context, so or being on the red planet. What I didn't mention in the main show, what we didn't talk about in the main show, is, and if I could look up his name, I will. Well-known Russian boy who was interviewed quite a few years ago.
Boriska.
Thank you, Boriska. And his sojourns, or being from the red planet, frankly.
Yes.
The only difference with him is he talks as if it was a long time ago and there's no more sentient life on that planet. That always kind of made me wonder, because we've then heard other stories. I believe people, the likes of Randy Kramer as an example, Captain Randy Kramer, who I believe talked about being not only on the red planet, but on the moon and other planets in our
Yeah.
solar system, and life being there now. So that
Yes.
being said, but this time traveling aspect is quite interesting to me, and particularly if you're getting you're hearing from more individuals now, maybe not a ton, but enough to make it, make your eyebrows raise and say, what's going on here? Do you think it's important for us to be in touch to the degree that we can with these individuals, given what's going on, so that they can give us a perspective to the best of their ability of what we may be heading toward, if
Yeah.
that makes sense?
I absolutely. One of the things that I constantly keep in mind, and a number of whistleblowers have said, that we have been given a minute amount of the technology that they now have. And they've got technology at least 30 years in advance of what we're given privy to. At least 30 years. It may be even more than that. You think of what could change our lives if we had access to a lot of this technology that whistleblowers are talking about. We've got Andrew Basiago, who talks about, the secret state space program.
Mm-hmm.
A few days ago, did an interview with Tony Rodriguez, of the secret space program, who, again, I met him in Melbourne probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And it was the first time he'd come out with talking about his own story, where he's been to other planets, where he was accessed for this the secret space program for 20 years and worked on other planets. And when you first hear this, and I remember Tony saying to me, you were the first researcher really I'd talked to, and I didn't know what your reaction was going to be. And he said, and you were so, respectful of that, and you listened and asked acceptable questions and all the rest of it. And I said, for me, what was so significant about something that I had not been exposed to previous to that, in terms of, is this another whole new reality that's part of our world that we're not having access to, was the detail. You could ask him almost about, what did you do here, or what did you do there? And he would come out with specific detail. Now, I don't care how, even the most amazing storyteller might get confronted when they're asked about a lot of detail. And Tony had incredible detail.
Didn't flinch, right?
About his experiences and what happened. And this, you'll have to, and I don't know how many of your audience are into the fact that it's pretty obvious that we have technology to create clones. That's been, it's there. It's there.
It's there, and it's being used, and it has been for quite some time.
Quite some time.
The evidence shows that. Let's just say,
that's right.
Yeah.
So, because I asked Tony about, the whole age regression thing, and he said, and of course they grow, that's how they do it. You do your 20 years in that secret space program, and they put your consciousness back into a 10-year-old body, because they've got the clones to do that. And then he said it wasn't for a while he really remembered anything much, but gradually, memories started to come back of this other existence. And the only way they can do that, of course, is through creating clones. Well, they've been doing that. We're not told that the technologies reach that, even though they were, talked about Dolly the sheep that they cloned in 1980.
And why were they? Yes. Why were they so interested in that?
Thing. Well, we know that they're way in advance of what they're showing us and whatever. It's time to wake up and smell the roses, isn't it, really? If they're showing us that in the 1980s, they've probably been doing it for 20 or 30 years already.
Absolutely.
And they've got way beyond that now, of course. And we're hearing it all the time, aren't we? When it comes to certain political figures, are they the real deal, or are they in fact clones? Because they can move consciousness, and the ETs can do that. I remember a number of regressions that I did where the person was saying to me they're being picked up by these these ET beings, and they would say to me, they've moved my consciousness so they can work on my brain. So they would move their essence somewhere else, so they could actually work on the physical part of their body, and then put the consciousness back. Well, if they can do it, and they, this is part of the experience, not just one person. I remember another young lady explaining to me that when she was on the spacecraft, she was in a gray Zeta body as a scientist working on something. And I said, so where's your physical human body? And she said, oh, it's sort of over to one side waiting for me. And then described that she moves. When she's finished, her consciousness in a ball of light would move and reanimate her human physical body. So, you start to connect the dots here and say, this isn't really as strange as you might think it is.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. And like I said in the main show, Mary, I don't think a lot of the journeyers think it is. I think some of them may have even had firsthand experience. I know some of them have actually with this.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of, what is the movie Sword? Did you ever see the movie Swordfish with John Travolta and Halle Berry?
No.
About it had to do with oh gosh, you're gonna make me I'm gonna make myself sound stupid because I can't remember the actual theme. It had to do with some underground intelligence and but mainly it had to do with deception of personality and who was who. Both Halle Berry and John Travolta play characters that are clones of themselves, and they are basically posing as one personality. I'm really going to screw the whole theme up, but the point is that they were parading that kind of technology in front of us once again through film. This is, this is not really to me about fiction at all, but really just letting people know this is what we're doing. We're just showing it to you through this gateway, but this is actually what's going on. As a matter of fact, I can say publicly, I'm on the History Channel on a show called The Proof Is Out There, and I was assigned a story to cover for the show of this allegation that both Putin and Kim Jong-un have clones, and we covered it on network television. Now, obviously, I think they ended up debunking it, but I was the one that had to present the there were pictures that you could see some differences in their features, and yet they seemed almost identical. But the bottom line is, I think even the mainstream is kind of putting it out there for you, even if it's kind of said in a way that's a little tongue in cheek, maybe, or it's a fiction show. No. This could very well be happening. And the other thing, sorry guys, I have to spit this out too. You talk about the ET technology and their ability to do it. Well, all of this talk about various world governments and militaries having either not bartered, maybe in some cases bartered, but treaties to use some of the technology, the ET technology, and or in some cases stealing it, however they procured it. Well, these are the types of things that they'd be interested in, right?
Yeah.
So, right? So is it really that far-fetched, guys? I don't think so. Not at all. And I do think that could very well be happening now.
There's certainly enough whistleblowers out there now that are saying the same kind of thing. But for me, it's not just the whistleblowers. It's when you've got these personal stories where they've got no access to whistleblower material at all that are coming out with this kind of thing. And that, to me, really gives it substance.
Absolutely. The most, to me, to tell you the truth. Yeah, like the kids. That's the most corroborating of all.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We kind of left the walk-ins conversation back there, but we talked about that on the main show, but I do want to bring this up. Excuse me, because it is connected. All of this is connected. When the walk-in, the original soul within the walk-in decides to vacate and allow another soul to come in, where in some cases might that original soul go? because we know that the soul as energy, as consciousness is not annihilated. It doesn't disappear. Have you
Yeah.
gotten any information, any testimony, any ideas as to where the soul, the original soul of the once animated person goes when the soul, a new
Yeah.
soul comes in?
Yeah. I've not come across anyone who's had that shift, that soul swap, if you like, say what happened to the original soul. My suspicion is it's like when I've done past life regressions and you take them into the through the death sequence, and they see themselves purely as spirit, and they'll talk about what they learned in that life, what they gained, what they didn't gain, or whatever, and then they're joining their soul family before they decide to incarnate in some other reality or experience or whatever. And I suspect it's the same thing. It's like the soul has had a mission for a temporary time on this planet, and this is a good biological body that someone else can utilize at this stage because they've got a job to do or something to do. And going back to the ones that have more of their essence, what they have said is that they've had more of their oversoul come in because the task was greater than they realized or harder than they realized, and they needed to access more of that aspect of themselves, more of their consciousness, to deal with the challenges of what they came up with, because they couldn't quite handle it with the consciousness that they had allowed for that. Almost, I don't know whether, I mean, it seems a weird thing to say that, but look at us when we want to access more information, understanding, awareness, and we talk to our higher self or our oversoul. We draw in more information, don't we? We draw in more understanding by going into that place of higher consciousness and saying, help me understand this, and accessing that awareness that they've needed to understand something that's going on, which the conscious mind doesn't fully understand or needs to understand. So it's that's how I do the comparison between the two. It's the same thing, that you want more of that to enable you to function on this planet in a way that you've got a mission or a task to complete, and there isn't enough conscious access, so they need more conscious access.
Right. A lot of us need more conscious access these days, I'll tell
Yeah,
you. That
yeah.
reminds me of, I want to get a question in that one of the journeyers had. David Lyell, I want to shout out to you. And what sparked me to remind me to ask is because we were having this conversation. We had a little group chat the other day, and it did come up in terms of the times that we're going through right now. Some people, he was one of them,
Mm,
are talking about, it seems more difficult to access that which we're
mm,
talking about, whether it's the higher self, other entities, guides. I've heard people talk about this recently, that they're having more of a difficult time. It's not that they can't do it, but it seems to be more of a struggle. I don't know whether you've heard that lately, and why, who knows. But yeah, that's something that's come up, that making that connection. And yet, in other ways, it seems that we're having other experiences that are off the charts,
mm,
anomalous and extraordinary. So there's
mm,
some kind of quirky, I don't know what you would even call it, but some people are talking about that they're having a
mm.
hard time making that connect. Have you heard that?
What I have been, certainly many have asked me to help them with making a more conscious connection that they can feel confident with. And they've been, I've been asked that a lot in over the last couple of years. That's accelerated, where people are open, they are getting a certain amount and what have you, but needing a little bit more of a operating system, if you like, to help them
Interesting.
feel more confident with their abilities and their awareness. Certainly that's been part of it. I think the reason it's been so difficult is you've got so many conflicting areas of information
Yeah.
and frequencies out there, that it can become so confusing. Do I believe this or do I believe that? What actually resonates? And because we're in a state of chaos and confusion generally on this planet, we're picking up on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not only picking on our own confusion, but everybody else's if we're an empath, for
That's a good
example.
point. That's a very good point. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. We did touch on that actually. Yeah. I think the empaths, I'm one of them, card carrying member, are having a heck of a time. Many of us we're having a heck of a time, and that needs to be addressed. I really want to go into that more on a main show, perhaps. But let me get this question in, Mary. Then I'm going to let you go because you've been so kind, and I know I'm winding my day down, and you're just gearing up for yours. So let me offer this question from David Lyell. Thank you, David, for the question. He says, has Mary had any experiencers in Australia or the States that felt connected to Liam Freeney? Liam Freeney. I asked this because one of the craft he recorded that appeared in the episode that Mary Rodwell regressed Liam, upon seeing it, triggered the physical symptoms I felt with my own close encounter.
Right. So have I had much feedback about people connecting to Liam's story? Not in that way, particularly. I think his story is very powerful, except for I will say what was interesting was when he was the child from 7 to 10, having always being ill on the Sunday morning, not knowing why he was ill and them never finding any reason for it until we worked out that all his encounter experiences were the night before, and he was having downloads of information that were actually, if you like, the reason why he was always so sick the next day, because of the downloads that he was having from these beings and whatever.
That's interesting.
And I did a regression with someone in recent times where they had a period where they were sick over a certain length of time with their ET experiences with a similar kind of thing. With the downloads, it was a lot for them to process, and it left them, I think it was with also a temperature, which was interesting, very high temperature. Mm-hmm. And she said they could never explain it. You know, the doctors, you know, were shaking their heads saying, you know, what's this all about? And they had no way medically of explaining why of this high temperature. And it's something that I'm finding interesting, that there seems to be these anomalous events after encounters that may be due to whatever procedure or downloads that are going on, which may be the body struggling with, or, you know, to actually integrate. And so it has a reaction to that. But I don't know enough yet to categorically say that.
That's a good question. That reminds me to both you and to David, who I hope is watching. Barry Littleton, who I think you know, talks about something that he refers to in his own encounters as temporal aphasia. It's basically a nausea that he will often get. I don't know if it happens every single time, but when he's been on board craft, he says that he will have a sense of, you know, aphasia. The way he uses the term, it has different sort of symptoms, but he explains it as almost like a sickness that he'll get in the presence or even shortly thereafter having an encounter on board craft, because they're radiating so much energy. And obviously there's some people that talk of literal burns, getting physically bruised and burned based on encounters. But this, I think it's the way Liam is describing it is a little bit different in that there's almost like a nausea, or, you know, like you said, the body is having a difficult time acclimating and integrating the information that it's getting. And so it will respond physically. So that's interesting. David, if anything like this has happened to you, I'd be curious to know. So please let us know. Wow. Interesting. Still so much. I have a feeling we're gonna know a lot more. And I'm talking to people, you know, ever since my move and my new location here in Charlotte, North Carolina, interim move. I've run across a couple of people, just happen to run across a couple of people. They ask what I do. One thing leads to another. And before you know it, they're telling me their story. Guys, there are a lot of us having experiences. We need to start talking about it and dialing Mary up to have her do a regression and tell you what the heck is going on. My goodness. Are you still actively taking on clients, Mary, for regression?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's been a real mix of those wanting to work more consciously with their multidimensional awareness that's been activated, or they're wanting to explore something that's happened in their past, or to find out more about what this all means to them in terms of the big picture.
Mhm.
So absolutely, I'm booked usually 2 to 3 weeks ahead.
Okay.
At the moment, which, you know, is more than enough for me. Thank you.
I know. And you've got other duties going on with grandmother duties, may I say? Oh, you froze.
Thank you very much. People are really coming out of the space. Oh, I lost you for a minute.
Yeah. Are you back? Yeah, you froze.
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, here we go.
I
what did you just say? I lost that whole last thing.
Just saying how many people are really being inspired to come out the space closet, as I call it. You know,
Yeah, I love that. Coming out of the space closet. Uh-oh. There's your book. Think about it.
Yeah.
I'm just getting a very strong feeling, guys. I said to Mary offline, there's a book and you're about due. You're gonna have an epiphany. Something's gonna hit you. Something's gonna hit you, and I think you're about ready. Because when was The New Human written? When was that published?
Well, it was published at the end of 2016. And I did say to my team, make it comprehensive, because I don't want to write another one for quite some while.
I know about that. Oh my God, yes. I'm starting to get the itch a little bit, but it's a big undertaking. It really is. Yeah.
It is.
But well, thank you for all that you've brought to us, Mary, my dear. I miss you so much. I talk about my sojourns in Australia and the time that we were together, and it was precious, and it is precious even more so now that we're dealing with a little temporary reprieve and travel. So let's hope we can get back to that soon. So, all right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. I love you much. Take care. Bye-bye.